get
How's it
the
going,
good
man?
parts. It's good, man.
Yeah,
Things are going well.
good.
I'm just, I all I think about all the time is going back to Zambia, it seems. But
Yeah,
um, I gained 11 partners this last week.
that's
It's
awesome.
crazy.
Jeez,
I'm
in
up to
one
like,
week.
dude. In 7 of them, I think were in one day, and it was just like, and a couple of them were people I never expected. So it's funny because the way I look at it is I was going through this. If you're not paying attention, you'll miss what the Lord's doing. But then
Mhm.
there's sometimes where like He's not going to let you miss it until you get it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I've known that this fundraising season was going to be something like that, where like there were lessons to be learned, and I had kind of been going through it pretty casually and saying, I gotta have the funding come in, and once it comes
yeah,
in, I can go. And I never really applied my faith to it, and said, this is when I need to leave.
yeah.
And this is when the Lord, the date the Lord's put on my heart and all that stuff. So I kind of came into that realization like a, almost a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks. I was praying on it because a supporter was like, just plan a day. And that started this whole thought process. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, Lord, end of July, that's a reasonable time frame.
Oh, wow.
Let's get it done. And I was at 45% at the time. And then that was on like a Saturday. I spoke at a church Sunday morning, and
Uh-huh.
then Monday. And only like two supporters of that 11 were from the church that I spoke at. But it was
Huh.
just all like the floodgates happened. It was crazy. So
Wow.
I'm
That's
attributing it to
amazing.
a lesson learned.
Yeah, it's like, all right, this is the date. This is when it's happening, and watch everything come
Yeah.
together. That's awesome. That's so
Yeah.
amazing. That's
It
soon,
really
though.
like, yeah, it is really soon. It really
Yeah.
like lit a fire in me. Like, wow, the Lord really is in this, and He wants it to happen.
Yeah, definitely. So, give us a synopsis about Mitchel. Who are you? What are you doing? And why are you doing it? For the people that don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah. Sure. My name is Mitch. Um, what I'm doing right now consists of raising money to move to the mission field full time. That's mostly all I do. I I play live music gigs at restaurants, corporate events, all that jazz to pay my way through life while I fundraise. I'm doing that because I feel the Lord has called me to it. It's been a long journey, even since my first mission trip as a 16-year-old. I felt something, if you've ever been somewhere where you just step into it and you go, this is, I feel like I was made for this. I belong here. And that was just like, for some reason, the mission field, but I didn't really know at the time. And that was also right when I had begun to learn anything about music, anything about worship. Um, and in my early 20s, I did a few trips by myself, which were really eye opening as well. And in 2019, I had kind of come to a place where I was like, Lord, I don't have a desire to chase a specific career. I was always getting my hands into a bunch of different like skills and things because I just don't sit still very well. Um, and I felt the call into missions through, other long stories, but I, sold what I had and gained a few supporters and just left. I was with that organization for a year, and then COVID happened, but now I'm kind of on the path to do it full time as a career. And with Overland Missions, I have a few different hats. One of them is with the worship department. One of them is with the logistics department. I'll be working on a base where I'm kind of, I guess, EMT that's around, and also I will be doing some discipleship programs with the Zambian workers that work on our base. So that's me in a nutshell, at least what I'm
Very
doing.
cool. Yeah, that is a lot of different hats. Awesome. So tell us about your musical upbringing, like how you got to where you are, how it started, how you got to where you are now, and just like your journey as a worship leader.
Yeah, this will be a long one. Music, my grandfather bought me a guitar when I was a young boy, like probably 5 or 6,
Mm,
and like put me in guitar lessons. Of which, like, as an elementary school kid, like did not I was like sort of engaged, but sort of not. And it was a lot of like technique stuff and learning scales. And I was like, blah, this is boring. So I didn't apply myself to it. And I guess, had a guitar laying around for years until high school. I played the trumpet in middle school, just
hmm.
completely.
I didn't know
Um,
that.
you didn't.
No,
Like
that's awesome.
sixth grade, I decided to do band. I did band sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, and then
Huh.
my freshman year of high school. And band is how I met some friends that would bring me to church. I didn't really have
Mm,
a lot of exposure before that. Um, so around 15, 14 is when I got saved. I started going to youth group, and I had sort of taught myself a couple chords like online,
mm,
but I didn't know anything on the guitar. I didn't know that I could sing or anything um, until I went on a winter retreat with the youth group I was with, and there was just one guy, shout out Jeffrey Kerr, who was doing guitar, and one girl that was singing. And he was like, "Hey, if you want, you can strum along with us." And I was like, "I don't really know how, like, I don't know chords or anything." He's like, "You'll be all right, just like practice." And I was like, "Oh." So I was like staring at the chord sheet, like just thumbing along. And
mm-hmm.
um, one of the greatest testimonies for me about that whole thing is that from that point to leading worship, like with other people, just acoustic, but leading worship was just about a month. Like it was like the Lord,
Wow.
you know, downloaded this thing onto me, and I just kind of learned how to sing and play at the same time in a way.
Yeah.
And I like got my feet a little bit,
Huh.
and I started helping with the band and singing. We had a really big youth group and like lots of people on the worship team.
Hmm.
So that's where I got, my chops, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, I did a few lessons and learned a little bit of music theory. And then the world opened up. And I was like, whoa, the piano and the guitar, it's like, these are the things, like the language of music. And then, like, through the years, it just kind of developed. Like, you know, it's just this long journey of figuring out what it means to be a worship leader, um, what kind of that mantle is like, and what your role really is. Um, and yeah, it's been good. Um, so that was like 15 years ago now.
Wow.
And I'm still just trying to figure it out, trying to, and the craziest part about it, and something I ran into, was that I do not like being on a stage to this day. I do not like being in front of people.
Mhm.
I do not like uh, me being the only voice in the room at times. I
Mhm.
hate it. And so in my upbringing, I would run into, say, pastors or ministers that don't know me. They see the young guy with the guitar, wants to
Mhm.
be center stage, and they always feel like they had to give me a talking to, or make sure he
Yep.
doesn't get too, his head
Mhm.
doesn't get too big or whatever. And the funny part about it is that was never me.
Right.
It was the opposite, where the Lord was like, I have placed this thing in your life and on your life, and it's your job to walk it out and figure out how to steward it with me. But I would much rather be doing something behind the scenes, you know. So it's been a journey of stepping into something and having the boldness to do what I feel like he wants me to do in the moment, rather than having to pull myself back from the ego and pride of the rock band, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. That's
does that
good.
make sense?
Yeah, totally. Um, yeah, that's awesome. So worship and missions are separate, but
Hmm.
not in a way, so it's kind of a strange question, but maybe talk to us about your heart for missions and what compels you to pursue this lifestyle, like this calling, this ministry, as far as what you're supposed to do with missions specifically.
Sure. Um, the place that I'm at uh, is kind of like the Lord has tailored to me. It's very weird. Like I don't have a normal assignment within the organization, and I have a little bit of skill in certain areas. Um, and when I arrived kind of at Overland and to do my training in Zambia, I met the worship leader there, and this sort of thing was just sort of taking off. This vision of worship ministry and how it works in the nations and how it could work. And it's one thing that has always been on my heart, and the people I work with, their hearts as well, has been, how do we, move in worship ministry in other cultural settings, but also in a missions mindset. Um, we've written a few songs, and you can tell in the songs that they're very mission minded, like the you know to carry the gospel in certain ways. And when it comes to missions, like we're always really careful and cognizant of like culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because worship has culture, and worship music is its own thing in the United States. There are touring worship bands, of the same way that there's touring Christian artists in Zambia or wherever. Um, but for me, I see that the Lord has created every human being on earth and created every culture on earth, right? So how do we um, bring forth like the kingdom through worship and through music ministry and still maintain what is culturally beautiful? So for example, going to Zambia and spending a week out in the bush doing ministry in villages, some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard in my life. Not a single instrument,
Mm-hmm.
not even like in most cases a drum. The most intricate instrument I found was like some wire in a piece of wood with bottle caps as a shaker. Otherwise it's just drums, and even then there's rarely a drum. It's all voices, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is crazy, because people in this country in particular grow up singing and singing in unison, and there's so much unity in that, so many different sounds and parts that I had never really thought possible or heard before. And it's like, how do we keep the purity of what this is, and so later on in that trip, we were able to do a songwriting session with some guys and girls from a base up north in Zambia. And, one of the things that Libby, the worship leader, had spoken about was like being in a place, hearing a song that is really quiet and somber, like a ballad being sung by Zambians, and then afterwards the sheet asks, like, what do the words mean? And the words are, let us clap to the Lord. And you're like, what? There's no clapping involved in the song, but it's really mellow and somber, but a clapping song should be like happy. And so it was like this weird thing. And we're like, how do we empower Zambians or whoever to write their own music that is specifically declaring the deity of Christ, like, you know, with none of the fluff. And we kind of just let these guys write it, essentially. You know, they would tell us, because it's in a different language called Lunda, and we're like, we don't know what they're singing or saying, and we're like, okay, so what does that mean? And we're like trying to translate it to English, rather than coming in with like an overland missions song or whatever and saying, let's translate this into Lunda, and then losing the meaning, you know. So it's like, let's empower people to write their own songs with their own voices, declaring their own experience and declaring the truth of Jesus, you know, over their nation or whatever. It sounds beautiful and stuff, but then we got to put it into practice and see it like just kind of do its own thing. And it was beautiful. I don't know if that answered your question at all, because I kind of forgot the question, but
I got so caught up in what you were saying. But that's really amazing. Yeah, just you know, just talking about your heart for missions, how worship and missions are like separate but very intimately tied. But also just like, you know, about your heart for missions. And I think knowing you, it's so integrated. Like it's hard to, you know, even your path, even the position that you said was created for you, you know, or just what people see on your life, it's like they're not separate, you know, going and doing missions and being accompanied by worship. They're, you know, it seems interchangeable in a way, but I mean, yeah, I don't know if that all makes sense.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. No, but I love that. Love that answer. So just so the people listening and watching kind of have an idea, and you kind of for the most part already said it, but if there's anything that you missed or wanted to kind of zoom in on with Overland specifically, like, you know, what are you currently doing with Overland?
Yeah, so I guess tying a few of those things together. At the moment, still fundraising. Once I hit my goal of monthly partners, which I'm 71% of the way there. Once I hit that goal, it's basically, I've got to raise money for a truck, but it's basically like start the visa process and book a plane ticket and go.
Wow.
And once I get there, in Zambia, our main logistics base is called Rapid 14, and there are 6 or 7 others sprinkled throughout the country, and then a lot more sprinkled throughout the world. And that's where sort of a lot of the writing happens. We have missionaries everywhere that will send in ideas or sit down, and we'll have writing sessions. That's where a lot of the writing happens. That's where, you know, we have worship every single day on the base, and it's where the ministry is kind of based out of. So that's where they assigned me, along with other little skills I had. It was kind of like a key. It just fit perfectly. Where I'd like get to do, you know, workshop things and help fix cars and learn how to do that stuff. And then also be in the writing sessions, and also get to do discipleship, and also get to take teams out into the bush, and also get to lead worship while the expeditions are out there, and lead worship for the base, and sort of just press into what the Lord is, you know, what his plans are for the ministry in general. That's pretty much it. And
that's so exciting.
I'm committed full time, and people ask how many years you think you're going to do it. I'm like, I don't have like an end date, like just for forever, you know?
So you're just going for it. That's amazing. Love that answer. Okay. So, you kind of already answered this. I was going to ask you about your involvement with the worship ministry at Overland and the
Mhm.
missions field in general. I mean, you kind of spoke to that a good deal. I
Yeah.
mean, it really seems that it's so much more integrated than um, I think I even realized before. I know that you were helping with that, but I think the more that you're with them, the more they see like this is what you do and part of what you're
Mhm.
supposed to do, and your, calling, even just, as part of the missions field. So, um,
There's no hiding from it.
yeah. Okay, so, and you kind of alluded to this too, but I felt like you maybe had more to say about this. How do worship experiences differ in the experience that you've had and what you've seen in Africa, versus like here or even other
Yeah.
places around the world? How do those, you've alluded to it already, but maybe you have more to say to, like, what are the big differences you see between like a worship service here, the culture here, and the worship culture in Africa?
Yes. Um, that's a big one. The differences.
Yeah.
Speaking probably mostly to Americans, we know sort of the gambit of what it could look like. I have friends that go to really liturgical type churches that believe that there's only a few instruments you can have in the worship setting: a trumpet, an organ, a cymbal, chanting type stuff, and all that's beautiful. You get the other end of the spectrum where you know a church worship band has written music and is a band and now tours the nation, which is amazing as well. In big, I what are they, stadiums? Like selling out stadiums and
Yeah.
huge music venues and bringing like glory to Jesus throughout, you know. And so it's one thing I notice in America is atmosphere. Um, there's in a worship service, typically like worship is a section of it, um, and that's amazing. It's beautiful, um, but usually there's a synth pad that
Mhm.
plays when the spiritual stuff happens, um, and I love it. Like it's what I was like born into. Then you get to Zambia, where it's Africa. Like people love to dance. People love to preach. It's just different. And then probably one of the biggest things is clapping and singing. Though that's your atmosphere. Um, but a lot of the experience that we have is like in a village around a fire with a lot of people, and half of which being missionaries that don't know what the words are or what they mean, just singing along and
Yeah.
trying to hear what they're saying and like make out the syllables.
Yeah.
And it's a big leap. Even the worship on bass at times, there's a few Zambian songs that they've been able to sort of bring in and make part of worship, and they're very typically like dancey songs and
Mm.
upbeat and fun. um, the one beautiful thing about Zambian worship is through the clapping. There's people that just take their own parts, but typically there's a person leading,
Mm.
and they're not singing the same. They're singing the same song, but it's not in
Hmm.
unison with everyone else. They're leading with their voice in such a beautiful rhythmic way that I've never heard before until
Mm.
I got there. I would have to show you an example of like videos I've taken on my phone, but there's a leader that is um, like throwing out what the next thing is that's going to be sung, and people follow it, and it's
Mm.
it's crazy. But you don't, in my experience, you can't hide anything behind the music. Music has a beautiful, I think, superpower to invoke emotion in you, as far as like instruments is concerned. But in that setting, like the only thing you have is the voices, and at times is even more powerful than anything I've ever experienced. Just because of the unity thing. And I heard Brooke Ligertwood, I just saw it today on Instagram. She referenced a study where they studied people's heartbeats start to come in alignment when they sing in unison.
Yeah,
And I was
that.
like, well, like it makes so much sense. First of all, you're sort of breathing the same way, and it's like when we come into one accord, like it brings unity, and it's just like, it's so true. And that's something I've really witnessed with, being in Zambia for the time that I was there. It was just beautiful unity.
Wow.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that was great. I feel like, like I like what you said, like you can't hide behind, there's nothing to hide behind that style of music, because I feel like there's something to be said for definitely the synth that kind of invokes emotion and keeps an atmosphere, but there's something so original and authentic and transparent and vulnerable about just being out and singing and clapping and a cappella, and you're not relying, I guess is a way to say it, you're not relying on these other things to carry things. It's just this is exactly what it is, and it's an authentic, beautiful moment,
Yeah, and that's one thing. One morning, I think, they asked me to lead alongside one of he's a Zambian missionary, and he, like, it was interesting because I was like thinking of set list and thinking of this, and he was just like, we just pick a song and
we just do it.
sing the song, and there's no, like, basically what he was saying is we don't sing the verse 2 times and then sing the chorus 2 times and then go to the bridge. It's just like, it's way more flow, and which is my heartbeat, like it always has been, just being in the presence and flowing with wherever the Spirit is leading and stuff. So it was really cool, refreshing, but different.
I
don't know.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so you kind of maybe have alluded to this, but I don't want to just assume that you have. Can you tell us about the most profound worship experience you've had, whether that was here, whether that was there, whether that was somewhere else? Maybe you've already mentioned it, and but if not, I want to give you the opportunity to share that.
As a worship leader or a worshiper?
It doesn't matter, either or. A marking moment, or just like, this is wow, mountaintop moment in worship.
There's one that comes to mind that's sort of recent, but I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of incredible things I could pull on. But I was just, it was on a Friday night, I think, during my advanced missions training. And they called it a revival night. And they at one point had, during worship, all of the students come up forward towards the stage, and they were going from person to person praying for them. And I was just in a place of worship, and I was just really surrendered in the moment. And I had seen sort of Pentecostal things in the past, and what most people would consider Pentecostal things.
Sure.
And I just stood there. I was like, Lord, I I know you're a gentleman and all of that, and you're not gonna force anything upon me. I was just sort of like walking through things with the Spirit in that moment, and I said, I'm not gonna make anything happen. Um, I'm just gonna be here. I'm just gonna rest and worship you. And I really engaged my will in that moment. I don't know how to explain it. I was just in a place of real surrender and real, like, Lord, I give you my thoughts and my will and my emotions and everything in this moment. And I was by myself. Nobody was anywhere near me. Nobody was praying over me.
Yeah.
And I just felt this physical washing over my body. And my arms and hands just lit up with electricity. In a touch of God that I have never experienced before. And it was like, it was a marking sort of moment of, yes, my son, I'm here. I see you. I'm with you, and it's just very gentle. Like, there wasn't any sort of abrupt in my face moment of someone praying over me and shaking or whatever and feeling the Spirit. It was just me in the secret place, in the quiet place, alone. It's like, and that's really, in my years of walking through this thing, what it means to worship is to descend into your spirit, into your heart, in a moment of giving God all the glory and surrendering your will to him. And that was just kind of a solidification of a lot of things in that moment.
Yeah, I would say that's a profound
it was
pretty profound moment.
Yeah.
Wow, very cool. So this is kind of an interesting question.
Sure.
It's kind of, I don't know, now that I'm bringing it, maybe it's kind of silly, but I just thought, so anyways, so are you a worship leader who is called, or a worship musician, whatever, who is called to the mission field, or are you a missionary who has natural giftings and the experience to lead worship, or are these details completely irrelevant? I feel like I know what you're gonna say, but I'm not.
I think you do too. I would say, the vast majority of my experience and walk with the Lord, I have been a worship leader. But you could also say that the whole time I was also called into missions. I just hadn't been in the moment.
Yeah.
And I would say that I would say first and foremost, I'm a follower of Jesus.
Right.
And the Lord has marked me to do a specific thing or carry a specific calling. And they're both kind of synonymous. And like a rope, they're like intertwined, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. So this is just a fun question. How do you feel about, I'm sure you've heard of the term musicianary. That can mean a lot of different things.
Benjamin, I've never heard that word in my life, actually.
Shut up. You have not. Are you serious?
You said musicianary?
Yeah, musicianary. So this was, I feel like this is one of those, I don't want to say church hipster words, but like words that kind of popped up a few years ago to maybe 5 years ago. I don't know, maybe longer. For people, for church musicians who go around to either different churches or different ministries or different, maybe they're touring or they're actually worship leaders who go into other countries as an actual missionary but part of what they do, of who they are, is bringing music and worship and leadership in that area. And so yeah, it's a thing, or it's at least a phrase that was coined. And so I'm actually shocked, because you're like almost exactly what that is, and you haven't heard that phrase before. Doesn't matter if you have or you haven't. It's not like
Right.
people go around saying, well, some people might, like, I'm a musicianary, it's kind of like a fun thing on words, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting because I mean you could go anywhere with that.
Mm-hmm.
In this, like, worship is a little bit, you know, its own animal when it comes to
Yeah.
those kind of things. But you could say, I'm a nurse, but I'm also
Yeah.
a missionary,
Yeah.
or I'm an engineer, or I'm just really good with organizing, or,
You're
like
100%
whatever
right.
your skill set happens to be, but then you're
Yeah.
also called into missions. But worship and worship leading is like a thing.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of different.
Yeah, it is different. It's,
Mm.
and I've seen a lot of people, a lot of ministries, paraministries, traveling ministries that'll come into a church, and like a huge part of what they do is one of them, the kids or the husband or the wife or both, like they'll do some singing, or they'll do a worship thing, or one of them super talented at an instrument,
Yeah.
or it's like, I don't know why, it's almost like I feel like I've seen that a lot, and I feel like, oh, that's a musicianary, like someone who's bringing what they have to bring, and with that is the language and the the, I don't know how to say it, the just that atmosphere of that common language of music
Sure.
and worship, and that kind of, what worship does, it softens us to hear what God wants to say to us, I mean, amongst a billion other things. But yeah, wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
you could go anywhere with that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think of, there's a missionary couple on the base. One guy is the chef, does all the food for like everybody, and then his wife works in the office, does all kinds of like logistical things.
Yeah.
And then
So really, missionaries, I mean, people get so stuck with that word, like, I'm a missionary, and you just think, oh, you're bringing the Bible and the gospel to a people group or a foreign country
mhm,
who hasn't heard that. But really, missionaries are, I'm doing what I do best somewhere else for the purpose of
yeah.
bringing Jesus into their lives and making them
So
know who he is.
in a sense, yes, but also like in a sense, no. Like I have a really basic mechanical ability, but like part of my role is involving like fixing trucks and stuff.
Mm,
And I'm like, can you guys like teach me how to fix a truck so that I can, you know, but it's like a missionary is just somebody that says yes. That's it.
yeah.
Like in whatever context, a missionary is someone that says, I see the gospel, I see what it's done in my life. I see that people need to hear this. I'll
Yeah.
do anything that I have to do between now and then for the greater of it. And that's really
Yeah.
what keeps missions organizations running, is like people that in churches and everything, like people that are willing to die to themselves, and like even if it's your passions, um
Mhm.
I have a wide array of different things I'm passionate about, but I know people that are not super passionate about the assignment that they have. But or they could do, some other assignment that's along with their passions, which is amazing. But sometimes it's just like where the Lord has you, and it's like this needs to get done, and there isn't somebody to do it. So I will gladly take it on and be the best at it that I can be,
Yeah.
until someone more capable or qualified comes along
Sure.
that wants to do it more than me or whatever, and you transition. But that's really all it comes down to. Like somebody's got to cook the food, somebody's got to make sure the plumbing works, somebody has to preach. It's
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
usually ends up being all of the missionaries fixed plumbing or cook or preach at some point, which
Yeah.
is kind of fun. You wear a
That's
million
so
hats.
good. And I feel like, in just hearing you say that, I feel like that it, the mission field was probably difficult for people. And I'm sure the Lord teaches them things, but and whatever grows them. But I feel like it might be difficult for people who are stuck in that. I do this. I don't know how, or I don't want to do this, or this. It's probably either a learning curve for them, or maybe something that they're not able to do at that time for whatever reason. So
Yeah,
just a thought.
yeah, it has a lot to do with capacity and being challenged. And when you're in certain settings that you're not used to, you have to like kind of raise your level of capacity and say like, okay, this is how I've been operating for however many years or time, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually what's required. I got to get there. Like the Lord
Yeah.
can help me get there. And we call it shattering the plate. When you say, I have too much on my plate, like, I can't fit anything else. Like somebody was preaching and they were like, drop your plate and shatter the plate and ask the Lord for a bigger one, and then handle it all,
Wow. I love that. I've never heard that. I mean, I've
right?
heard a lot on my plate, but I've never
Because
heard that. So
that's the reality about hard things is the more you do the hard thing, the more used to doing the hard thing you are, and the greater your capacity to do that and handle other things at the same time.
yeah. Wow. That is so
Which that's
good.
the kind of thing that you say that bites you in the butt later. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is that moment where my capacity is increasing.
I'm feeling the capacity increasing.
Yeah.
Well, I just have a couple other things to ask you. This has been really awesome. And I appreciate your time for sure.
Of course.
So if you had a philosophy, and this is kind of a huge question, so you can make it as broad or as simple,
Philosophizing.
yeah, as you want. If you had a philosophy of like what you believe is extremely important or vital, or like these three things or this one thing, what would that be? Like, what do you think every worship leader or church Jesus musician, what's important that they know? What's the most important thing for them to know and do, practice, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a big question.
Yep. I need to gather it all. I would say to any person that feels they have a call or considers themselves a worship leader, that you have a mantle, calling, whatever, whether you like it or not, on your shoulders to steward the praise that is given to the Lord in a certain way, steward the worship, but to remember that you are first a worshiper, and your only goal is to give praise and glory to the one who deserves it. That's simply it. That is your job, to be a worship leader and usher people into the secret place, which is honestly a gift from the Lord. It's a place where you can retreat to and be with him and feel everything and deal with everything and feel the downloads that he gives to your brain, or sometimes just exist. Your responsibility is to bring that secret place to everyone, and give him glory. Like that's it. And I think all that God is looking for is broken bread and poured out wine. I will say that to the day that I die, that if you are someone who is like bent on giving God the glory, like you will see heaven come to earth, like you will see God glorified. You'll see all of those amazing things that happen in worship settings are because people are just willing to to lay it all out and lay it all down and be broken before him. Like Isaiah 66 says, this is the one to whom I will look upon, the one who is broken and contrite in spirit. That's it. That's all God's looking for, is brokenness. It's the opposite of what the world says. Like, you have to have it. It has to be clean. You have to have the click tracks. All of those things are beautiful. They're all secondary to lifting up the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
If you're doing anything else in any moment, no.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Just like, I would say you're a worshiper, and just be cognizant of the secret place, and that's it.
So good. So okay, last question. And before I ask this question, I just definitely want to tell you how awesome I think you are. Super appreciate you.
Stop it.
Your friendship and everything that you're doing, have done, and obviously I can't even wait to hear about everything that you're going to do, once you're over there in Zambia, right? It's Zambia. Yeah, Zambia. Okay. Yeah. Just can't wait.
Thanks for having me on, bro. Like, this is cool.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, you were literally one of the first people that popped in my mind. Like, oh my gosh, I have to have you, Mitchell. So okay, last question. We'll end with this. What's coming up next? You kind of already said this, so feel free to chop this up however you like, or say whatever you want. But what's coming up next for you in your journey? What can people do if they want to learn more about you and what you're doing? And how can they support you if they want to do that?
Yeah. I did say it before. Next up is getting 100% funded, raising the rest of my vehicle budget, and getting on a plane and moving myself over there permanently, and just getting to work. Like, my job is sitting there waiting for me to show up, like, and that's no joke, even a little bit. Everything that I could be doing when I get there, I could be doing right this moment. So that's what's up next for me. I guess maybe we could leave contact info somewhere in the thing, but
I'll put it here or after or wherever. I'll put it somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I have like a little bio thing. If you go to overlandmissions.com/donate/Mitchel Duval, should pop up, and you just read all that. That's where you can go to support if you so choose. But
great. Yeah. Well, Mitchell, thank you so much. Appreciate it. You're amazing. Cool. Yeah. And we'll be checking in on you, seeing how things are going. And super appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Of course, man.
All right. Bye, everyone.
See you.